episode 19 of Uncensored. I am your host, Keith Andrew. Along here is my friend, Matthew Campbell. And I just want to say thank you for being a guest on my talk show once again.
No problem, my pleasure.
Now, for people who don't know what Uncensored is, Uncensored's my way to show people that even with a learning disability, I can still overcome controversy and reach my goals in life. And at the same time, I'm turning myself into a perfect example for people out there deaf, blind, or in a wheelchair that you shouldn't label yourself as handicapped or mentally challenged. If you're very passionate about your work and if you're capable to prove to people that you can still mount to something, that's pretty much what all matters.
Very true.
Now, with that being said, I'm going to ask you a bunch of easy questions and a couple of political ones, okay. And this is your time. You can talk about whatever you want, ask me whatever you want. It is uncensored, so you can use the 4-letter words if you want to. So okay. It's pretty much just a normal conversation.
Okay.
So starting off, what can you tell me about yourself?
Well, I'm 23 years old. I live in Sherman Oaks, California. I've been in film and television for most of my life. And I really think what you're doing is great. My brother actually has Williams syndrome, which is a form of autism, is basically the easiest way to describe it. So, and he's got a regular job now. He graduated high school, all those kinds of things. So it's awesome to hear that he's not the only one trying to better himself and not being kind of pigeonholed to a certain way of being disabled. That he, I think I'm a big fan of this. This is great.
I appreciate it, and I wish there were some more people like you.
Well, you put the material out there and see. I'm sure there's hundreds of other people. Just you haven't met them, or we don't know about them.
Now, I tell you a funny story. I tell you how most people are hypocrites. Most of the people I interviewed for 71%, thanks to you. You're part of that 71%, said, "Oh, you're doing a wonderful thing, but we don't understand why aren't you as big or bigger as you think you are?" And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" "Oh, well, you're doing just a great thing, and why aren't you on the news? Why don't you have sponsors?" Yeah, and it's like, well, but thanks for the negativity, for the criticism. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying, this is why I'm redoing my interviews, and it's the right step. But I really don't know how to approach people in that type of area. Well, how would you, if you were in my position, how would you try to get a sponsor? You have any ideas for me?
You just got to put your, YouTube's a great medium, Twitter's good, obviously Facebook, all those kinds of things, and just put everything up there and just kind of keep being in the face of people. And then, you just keep doing what you're doing, and then eventually, you're going to find someone who is looking for exactly that, and then, things kind of take off from there, I think.
All right, I appreciate it. And, there's other people that I came across, the other 71% who said, for the most part, that, it's pretty good what I'm doing, but they don't want to be tied to it, or they don't have the time for it, or they're not interested, or they make jokes about it. Like one person I came across said, "Oh, you have a talk show, and you have a learning disability. How does that work? Do you, interview people who are, retarded or mentally challenged?" And I was like, "No, lady, if you have to ask me something like that, you're completely missing the point."
Right. Mm-hmm. I agree.
People are just hypocrites, and there's other people who say, "You're doing the right thing, but I don't think it would look good for me to help someone like you." And so, you can't have it both ways. You're saying I'm doing the right thing, but at the same time, you're saying you want nothing to deal with it. So it's kind of like, where's the in-between here? Where's the, okay, you're giving me support, but after you gave me support, now you're going back on saying what you're telling me. And, one reason I hate people. That's hypocrites.
Right. Well, I mean, if you think about the film business, there's also people who are handicapped. There's been actresses and actors who are deaf. We all know the show Breaking Bad. The guy, the son of Walter White's son, has basically a real mild cerebral palsy. I believe it is, and it's real mild. But I mean, he still has it, and he plays that on the show. But I mean, that's someone who, granted, it's not full blown like, you know, as severe as other people's, but he's worked his way into. I mean, that's like one of the staples of TV. I mean, it's an amazing show. And he's an amazing performer, and he didn't let the fact that, you know, he had issues and, you know, prevent him from pursuing his acting goals, you know.
Yeah, that's true. And there's a couple other actors. You mentioned one of them. I can't remember the other one. I think, I'm not spitballing here, but I think it's the one from Hawaii Five-0, one who does Steve McGarrett. I think he has like ADHD, or there's some famous person out there on a hit TV show. I know they have a disability, and they show people that, you know, you shouldn't let people hold you back and label yourself and anything. But now, you mentioned earlier, or we talked earlier, you mentioned you were an actor. How did you get into acting? Was it easy for you? Was it hard?
Well, I mean, it's still a process, you know. I originally started when I was 6. I had a really bad stuttering problem, and my parents, instead of getting me a speech therapist, other friends recommended put him in theater and get him used to, like, speaking and talking all the time and being around other people, because I was very withdrawn because I was self-conscious about it. And, you know, I ended up doing, like, I don't know, from age 6 to 13, like 28, 29 plays, and just kind of kept things going, and, you know, just kind of keep pursuing, keep doing it. It's a, you know, day-to-day thing.
That's true. What is your, like, main goal? Have you ever wanted to be, like, a voiceover actor? Do you want to be, like, a main star, supporting star?
Well, yeah, I've done, like, a lot of different stuff. I actually, it's funny you mentioned voiceover, because I just did a voiceover for my friend's band. It's a new band called the Resurrect the Machine, and I do all the voiceover work for them. And I do have a leading role in a film coming up, so I don't really put myself in any particular position. Like, I tried whoever wants to work with me, and if it's a really good project that I feel good about, then let's do it. That's how I feel.
All right. Well, after the show, I do have a couple ideas if you would like to hear them.
Sure.
All right. Now, moving on to the next subject. It's called, let's see, what would be a good one? With celebrities, you know, with Miley Cyrus and who was the other one? Justin Bieber. You mentioned that. How would you compare yourself? And you mentioned that you started at a young age, but how would you compare yourself and say, okay, we started at the same age, but they're self-destructed and they're doing this and that, and now you're doing, on the other side, you're doing this and that. How do you try to separate the two without, you know, saying, I'm better than them? If that makes any sense.
Well, I think what you're trying to describe, I think, is about decision making, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's, you know, depends on who you surround yourself with. You know what I mean? There's also been some talk about Zac Efron and rehab and all that kind of thing. It's just like, if you surround yourself with people who are doing a lot of drugs and there's like a lot of crazy partying going on, you can, you know, fall into that. But if you kind of stay away from those kinds of things and focus on your career and, you know, go out and have a couple of drinks and have a good time, but, like, if you're not around the hardcore drugs, it's you have to, like, look for it, you know what I mean? Or find people who are doing that to get yourself into that situation.
All right, but do you think, or for a perfect example, you're a perfect example, were your parents, you know, trying to find the words, they didn't make an exception for you, even though you are an actor then and now. You still learned about family values, and you still learn about everything about hard working. Do you think family plays a big part in it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if your parents aren't around, you're not going to have that support system, or you're going to have, you want to get acceptance somewhere. So if you fall with the wrong types of people, you're going to be doing the wrong kinds of things, My dad was, even though he wasn't always there, he was, they're pretty strict with me, basically. So, like, that, I didn't really fall into those kinds of traps that, some other people had trouble with.
All right. Well, where do you stand on legalizing marijuana?
Well, I will say this. I'm from Northern California, where a lot of people say the best stuff grows, so I'll leave it there. But I think we can probably figure out where I stand there, right?
All right. Now, it's funny you mentioned you're from California, and a lot of people on the WWE website were going on and on about the Undertaker losing streak. And it hasn't been in the paper I've seen it because, I'm in New York. I haven't seen it. But, for example, have you seen it in the paper? Is it really true that the Undertaker WWE losing streak was in the paper, or is it just making it up and get media attention?
I didn't really see that, no. I'm not really sure about that.
Well, on the subject, are you a WWE fan or a WCW fan?
I've seen it. I mean, I don't really follow it as closely. I'm more, basketball and football, and huge into soccer as well. Those kinds of sports I follow. But if someone has it on and wants to go watch like an MMA fight or whatever, I'm down to go. I don't follow it as closely as some of the other sports.
All right. Now here's a question for you. You look at people who are icons in their generation. You look at Michael Jordan. You look at Derek Jeter. Who do you think, sports-wise, because you said you're a sports person, who do you think would be the next breakout star that would be for this generation or the next generation?
What sport are we talking about? Just any, or?
Yeah, any of them.
Well, I think a lot of people would argue like Tom Brady's probably in there for football, especially with his story of coming from being like the 6th round draft pick to winning all those Super Bowls. And probably LeBron James is probably in there too. Is coming up from high school, just like dominating from the very beginning, And Kobe Bryant, I think those guys are probably all three, what people considered icon. When people think those sports, that's kind of who they think of.
What about, do you think, people say, for the legends and one more match, do you think the Hall of Famers for basketball or baseball, do you think they should come out for one more game? Or do you think when you reach a certain age, that's it, you just shouldn't move on?
Well, I mean, look at Brett Favre. He played until his 40s, and people say, like, oh, he's falling apart, blah, blah. He came back and still played well. And Michael Jordan, he retired like 3 times? So, I mean, if you had the skills to do it, do it. And I don't think that you should ever put anything like age or anything to prevent someone from doing what they like to do.
All right, our next subject is... because we're about the same age, you mentioned you're 23 and I'm 26. Do you remember the whole console war? The Nintendo versus Sega and everything?
In regards to what? Like...
Just like, every generation has something that stands out. In the 90s, you had WWF versus WCW, and at the same time you had... I don't know, you had the New York Rangers versus the New York Islanders. Just for an example. But do you think each generation has something that stands out that makes it unique? Like for video games, so are you a hardcore video game person, or?
I don't really. it's kind of a time thing for me. It's kind of hard for me to, I don't spend a whole lot of time with it, so I know about a lot of the games, like, especially a lot of the military games that are really popular, like Call of Duty and all those games. They're, like, hugely popular, and I know they sell really well. I know of them, and I played them a couple of times, but I wouldn't consider myself, like an avid, like, gamer.
All right. No, I got it. So, but what do you think, people talk about, Nintendo versus Sega, PlayStation versus Xbox. Do you think, especially now, it's PlayStation 4 versus Xbox One, do you think that's going to continue to trend? PlayStation 5 versus Xbox 10? Or do you think eventually, like everything else in life, it's got to be played out, or people will move on to something else?
Well, I guess, like, I would think, like, the way it's played is going to change. Like, you're playing with people all around the world. In the late 80s, early 90s, or into even the late 90s, you couldn't play against some guy in, like, Thailand. You know what I mean? Now you put in your headphones, you log on, and you can play against anyone in the world. So I think it's going to be even more like that. So I think eventually there's not going to be any consoles. You would just log on and find someone to play with, and you just download the game on your laptop, whatever you do, or it's going to be even hook up to the television now, and you're just going to go and play, and then you just whatever game you like, put it on and boom, just like Netflix,
Yeah,
I think that's where it's probably headed. So there probably will be consoles in the future.
No, that's true. And you remember, I don't know if you remember, but that's, for example, back in the, I think, what was it, 85, Nintendo released the virtual helmet in the virtual clubs. Do you think eventually that's, like we were saying, do you think eventually that's going to come back in style? Because you think about it, it was ahead of its time back in 85, and now with everything else as a whole 3D thing, do you think that's eventually going to come back into style like everything else, or it determines?
I think if they came up with something like virtual reality, people would be interested in doing that. But people, since they have the graphics are so amazing right now, and they just keep getting better with how technology improves, I don't think that they would. I don't know if that would go back in style. I just think they would be like more updated. Like you'd actually have a full-on virtual reality thing you could buy.
Right. What about? I'm just trying to find something else. Remember the two things I remember that recently, or about 5 years ago, it came out and people hated it. Where did you stand on the 3D TVs? Were you behind the whole 3D TVs, or did you think it was something that was kind of a good idea on paper, but it wasn't realistic?
Now, are you talking just TV, or are you talking movies as well?
Both.
Both?
Yes.
Well, I saw the new 300 at the IMAX in the 3D, and it was awesome. So, I think about certain things, and then, why on earth would you put 3D in Alice in Wonderland? So, it's kind of like, you know what I mean? Sometimes I think it can take away from it. Other times it's, really, really amazing.
Yeah, especially porn, if you're into that.
Right, I guess, yeah, I'm sure that's out there, too.
There's this other thing, you would think, well, there's a lot of people who are promoting this in, magazines, like in Brookstone magazines, but it isn't out yet. Where do you stand on the projectors? It's pretty cool where it's like a pen, you set it up and it projects like a virtual keyboard, or if you don't have a TV, you aim it at the wall and you turn the whole wall into a virtual TV. Do you think that's a good idea, or do you think eventually, that's got to be played out?
Well, I've actually seen, the old school way was like the projection against the wall or whatever, so I guess it's just a new updated version of how they're basically doing the same thing.
That's true. What about my next subject? Is people in Japan are coming up with ideas of new TVs. They were talking about the square. A couple of new ones would be like a rectangle, a circle. Do you think eventually, if it's a big thing overseas in the Western civilization, do you think it's going to come over to be a big thing in the East, or do you think people are not really crazy about the idea of change?
Well, I've worked in Tokyo. I had a couple gigs in Tokyo, so I've been over there, and I can tell you, if you haven't been, it's like you're stepping into the future. So they're like 5 years ahead of us. So they may have advertised that this is going on, but they probably that's already made and gotten better and mattered. You know what I mean? It's just like they're so far ahead that who knows what they're gonna do.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. A while ago there was this commercial of promoting androids and artificial life. So it's kind of like, it's pretty cool to say, hey, I have my own android bitch over here. And it's kind of like, do you really want to, this is our number, excuse me, I don't mean to hesitate, another subject we're going to go into. Do you think people, if they're able to create life, I know, a boy and a girl get together, yada yada, do you think you should play God, or do you think there should be a responsibility of having common sense, of knowing, it's a right thing to do this, but at the same time, should you have all this power and knowledge to misuse it? And that brings into the subject of bringing artificial life. And your dog agrees.
What's that? Yeah, she doesn't really bark that much. I don't know if she's going crazy now. So your question is, do you think that you should play God?
Yes, with artificial life and creating androids.
Well, I think in certain ways. I mean, like I don't know if you saw the new RoboCop. You saw that came out a few months ago. Where you got your dog up there too.
Yeah, it's a cat.
Oh, it's a cat. Oh, it's a cat. I think I think the only way is if you knew that person's like life would definitely be enhanced or like better. You know what I mean? If you had like the technology to have someone be able to help someone like walk again or something like that, or like, you know what I mean? If they're basically confined to a wheelchair and basically like a vegetable, then I think I don't know. It's a tough question because you'd have to really know what they really wanted. Do you know what I mean?
No, I completely agree with you on that. And you go one step further. In my past interviews, I said, if someone came back from Iraq, for example, and they're missing an arm or a leg or part of their head, and you have this power and technology to give them a robotic arm or a robotic leg, or use stem cells, for example, and regrow the arm and legs. I think, that's a perfect opportunity to, put your power to goodwill. But just to say you want to clone something that's been dead for thousands of years and play God, that's where, the stipulations and criticisms and all this other bullshit that comes out. You shouldn't do that.
Well, cloning, that's a whole different, can of worms there. If you're talking about someone who had to make that person better to be able to function in society or let them, pass away, that's different than cloning a whole new person, which who knows how they would react to the original person, or how would they differ? You know what I mean?
That's true. And you don't need technology like that falling into the wrong hands. Say,
sure.
Hypothetically, if they clone Hitler or they clone Bin Laden, you really don't need that type of, cancer around. But, if you're doing something that's beneficial to mankind, then, that's the idea, basically.
So yeah, you would definitely want to clone the right person. I think most people wouldn't mind having someone like Walt Disney or Nelson Mandela or someone like that being cloned, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But why on earth would you think it would be a good idea to clone like Saddam Hussein or Bin Laden or someone like that? It's just like, no. You know.
All right. The other question I was going to mention is technology, you know, and I talked about this in my past interviews, and I think it's amazing how technology came around the past, I guess, 15, 20 years. You know, 10 years ago, we didn't have FaceTime, or we didn't have a webcam. And
Right.
I said to my parents, and it's kind of a touchy subject, but back in 1997, my grandmother passed away. And she was in a shitty hospital, and I said, if we had technology now, then would have made a difference. So, you know, in some ways it's good that you have technology. You can help people prevent heart attacks or strokes,
Sure.
make them live longer. But do you think at the same time, what I'm trying to get to is, do you think technology is kind of getting out of hand? Do you think people are just going to misuse it like everything else?
Well, I mean, I think you're always going to have those people who that only want to profit off of people's pain, or you know, do whatever they can to get ahead, even if whoever they have to step on. You know, I don't think it's ever. I mean, that's always been the case forever. So when you have people with, like, you know, that are messed up, I mean, you can't take that out of the equation ever. I don't think. You know, people, you can't. I mean, there's going to be evil people and good people, so it's kind of hard to control whose hands the technology could fall into.
All right. Well, what about... Well, this one's got to be a little sketchy, but you can answer if you want, or you can always pass on it. A lot of people say, do you believe in a past life? You're like, oh, I met this person. It's so weird. It was the first time meeting this person, but I felt like you met them in a past life. You know, where do you stand on that theory? Do you believe that, you know, a lot of people say, and you watch Cosmos, that's a new hit TV show on Fox, doing a little plug for there. They mention, you know, when someone dies, they just don't die. Their energy gets formed in something else, or it gets transferred to something else. Do you believe in, I don't know, for example, you or me, do you think we lived before in a past alternative universe or different life, or what's your theory on that?
Well, I don't think so. But I think sometimes you meet someone like that. It's an energy that you're familiar with, and so maybe you have stronger emotions to that person than you normally would, because you feel that energy that they bring reminds you of something else. That's more my standpoint than I don't really. I mean, some people I think in like I believe it's like India and some of the East Asian areas, they believe in like people have like these lives or come back as something else, and you know that's a belief, but not something I particularly share. But I understand like how people can think that just based on meeting someone, being like, wow, I feel like I just met this person 2 weeks ago, but I feel like I've known him for years. So I think there's that energy and that feeling.
All right, and there's the other question to that, you know. Do you believe in life after death, or, you know, you don't have to answer that if you don't want to, just throwing it out there, but what is your theory on that?
Well, I grew up, you know, half my family's Catholic, half my family's Presbyterian, so, you know, naturally we always believe in the resurrection of Christ, and to me that's my belief. But again, I don't, if anyone wants to talk about Christianity, I'm always happy to talk to them about it, but I don't believe in forcing my beliefs on anyone. Everyone has, I mean, that's great about being American, right? You can believe what you want. You can make your own decisions with that. So I think, like, for me, I don't think so, but I don't discredit anyone who thinks that.
All right, well, before we wrap up, there's one more subject I'd like to talk to you about.
Sure.
And that's on gun control. You know, I said in my past interviews that I keep hinting towards, you know, if people are like mentally disturbed, or they have learning disabilities, or if they're convicts, terrorists, especially terrorists, like convicts or criminals, or if they have any kind of records, do you think, and do you agree, those people should be on a list of being banned from getting firearms? I do admit, and I do support the Second Amendment. You do have the right to protect yourself and your loved ones and kill in self-defense, and only in self-defense do you have that right. But do you think with everything going on, with the violence, and with the technology, and with the video games, do you think that has a big influence on people and the gun nuts out there, that they're going to make the wrong decisions or try to better or make more money for themselves instead of helping people? Where do you stand on the subject?
Well, again, it's like that would be going against the Second Amendment to take that away from someone. Obviously, you want to watch a bunch of serial killers or people that have that tendency and make them be able to get firearms. You would probably want to. I would vote that you want to make it as more challenging as possible and have some kind of a system where people who are hunters or are just using them for protection, make it a little bit easier for them. But I mean, there's it's one of those controversies where how would you really control that? You can't control or predict how someone's gonna react in the situation.
Well, that's true. And you remember, if turning back all those couple months of Sandy Brooks and the mall shootings, and let's see, what was it? Sandy Brooks, the mall shootings. I call them the variety pack kids. These 3 15-year-olds killed this guy just because they were bored and they thought it was cool. Where do you draw the line? And it goes back to parenting. You need to teach your kids right and wrong, family values. But do you think some people don't deserve to have kids? There's some people that are just going to say they're going to do what they're going to do, and the people just don't give a shit. Do you think that's basically what it comes down to?
Well, I mean, also it's like kind of what I was saying about predicting how people are going to be. You know what I mean? You can't just say, because you have such and such personality, you shouldn't have kids, or just because you had problems in life and you're at a strip club stripping, you shouldn't be able to have kids, or you know what I mean? There's a lot of people who would judge others for certain occupations or something like that. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily bad parents. Some are, some aren't. And some people who are very well off are terrible parents, but no one, is going to mess with them.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, do you have any subjects you would like to talk about? Anything you want to promote? Ask me.
Sure. Actually, yeah. Tomorrow, actually, I am filming a commercial for Visa for the World Cup. As a soccer fan, it's going to be a lot of fun. And also, I have a movie coming out, or we're going to be starting soon, called Crawlers. It's action-adventure. Has to do with the Ponderosa wildfires in Northern California. So it's going to be a lot of fun to film in the area where I grew up. So that's kind of some of the things that I have coming up, and we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, wrapping up the talk show, it's segment. I just want to say thank you for taking the time, and it was a real honor and privilege.